You walk into a room and you're convinced everyone just noticed the coffee stain on your shirt. You trip on a curb, and for the rest of the day, you're certain strangers are still thinking about it. You give a presentation, stumble over one sentence, and lie awake that night replaying it. You feel like you're standing under a spotlight, watched, judged, remembered. But the real answer is far stranger than that because almost nobody around you noticed at all. This isn't just a comforting thing, people say. It's a measured, repeatable finding in psychology, and the gap between what you think people noticed and what they actually noticed is bigger than you'd ever guess. Let's start with the experiment that gave this effect its name. In 2000, psychologists Thomas Gilovich, Victoria Medvec, and Kenneth Savitsky ran a study that has since become one of the most cited demonstrations in social psychology. They took a college student, dressed them in a deliberately embarrassing t-shirt, in one version featuring a large image of singer Barry Manilow, an outfit designed specifically to feel mortifying to a typical undergraduate, and had that student walk into a room full of their peers. Before entering, the wearer was asked to guess how many people in the room would notice and remember the shirt. Their estimate on average was that roughly half the room would notice. The actual number was less than a quarter. That gap alone is striking, but the researchers didn't stop there. They ran variations of the experiment using shirts with more neutral, even mildly positive images, expecting embarrassment might be the key driver. It wasn't. People overestimated how much others noticed their appearance and behavior across the board, embarrassing or not. The effect wasn't really about shame, it was about a much more basic feature of how your mind works. Gilovich and his colleagues named this the spotlight effect, the tendency to believe you are the center of other people's attention far more than you actually are. So why does your brain do this? The answer lies in a concept called egocentric bias, and it's less about vanity than it sounds. Egocentric bias describes the fact that you experience the world entirely from inside your own head. You feel your own embarrassment, your own mistakes, your own appearance, constantly and directly. Nobody else has access to that experience the way you do, so your brain, working with the only data it has, assumes other people must be experiencing you with a similar intensity, but they're not because they're each running the exact same internal spotlight on themselves. The person sitting across from you at that meeting isn't studying your shirt. They're thinking about whether their own comment sounded stupid 5 minutes ago. The stranger who saw you trip on the sidewalk isn't filing it away for later. Within seconds, they're back to thinking about their own to-do list, their own phone notification, their own minor worry. Everyone is the lead character in their own story, and in that story, you are almost always a background extra, appearing for a few seconds and then gone. This creates something researchers sometimes describe as a hall of mirrors that never actually connects. You assume you're being watched closely. The person next to you assumes the same thing about themselves. Both of you are wrong about how much attention is actually flowing outward because most of it is pointed inward. There's a second layer to this too, something Gilovich's follow-up research uncovered. Not only do people notice you less than you think, they also forget faster than you think. In one related study, participants who made a comment in a group discussion overestimated how much other members would remember what they specifically said, sometimes by a wide margin. The mind doesn't just underreport what other people initially clock, it compounds that by forgetting even the small amount it did notice, often within hours. So what does this mean for your actual life, walking around convinced people are cataloging your every misstep? It means the audience you're performing for, the one you feel judging your outfit, your stumble, your awkward joke at dinner, is mostly a projection. A very convincing one, built entirely out of your own self-focus, but a projection nonetheless. The actual room is far less interested in you than the room inside your head insists it is, not because people don't care about you, but because they are, at that exact moment, deeply absorbed in worrying about themselves in precisely the same way. That's not a bleak thought. It's closer to a quiet form of relief. The freedom you've been waiting for, permission to make the mistake, wear the weird shirt, trip on the sidewalk was already sitting there the whole time, hidden behind an overestimate your own brain kept insisting was true. You were never standing under a spotlight. You were standing in a room full of people, e.g.,